Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 30-minute webinar series on medical device design and development. Today, Marco De Angeli, who's from our design center in Milan, will talk about the latest sensing solutions that can help your products be effectively used for remote patient care, an ever-growing field. He's going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll be happy to answer your questions. So please do use the Q&A button that you see at the bottom of the screen at any time while he's talking. And then in about 20 or 25 minutes, we'll go over your questions. Thanks a lot, and we're ready for you, Marco.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you everybody for joining today. I am Marco De Angeli. I'm responsible for technology programs in Flex Health Solutions. So today we will focus on remote patient monitoring, and just to have a first look at this big market trend, we can see that the forecasts are predicting a total growth rate close to 50% just this year, and reaching about 46 million patients in the market. So very big opportunity here. And this is driven mainly by some technological advancement in connectivity and sensors, and we will look at it later on. But indeed, there are key reasons behind from a marketing perspective. First of all, there are more and more patient care platforms being developed needing access to big data in the cloud. Very important is the fact that financial incentives are now connected to the outcome of a therapy of a patient. And indeed, we know very well that the population is aging, the average life is going up, but indeed the chronic diseases are happening at the same point in time. So more and more we need to remote hospitalize these patients and monitor them remotely. Indeed, designing medical devices and manufacturing medical devices keeps a very important eye on how the data is processed, how it is transferred in a secure way, and everything must be done under a secure and stringent regulatory process. So I would say as a game changer, first of all, from a technology perspective, we can see that the smartphone is getting a very big role in the interface to the user. So as a way to create a local loop between the data that is collected by, for example, a wearable sensor like a CGM and the immediate feedback that is provided to the patient. Now the technology is moving to the next step. So how we can transfer this information also to the cloud for further processing and collect more useful insight and derive some analytics and additional actionable information. So we will see also how the connectivity is evolving from a smartphone to new emerging technologies, and how these can be also a game changer for the new medical devices that are under design. If we think about the overall ecosystem, the connection between the patient and the doctor, indeed the situation for a remote monitoring is totally different compared to when we have a patient in an office physically located with a doctor. The doctor can detect different signs, different behavioral patterns, different things looking at the patient that, of course, is not possible when all the data is just partial data is sent to the cloud. And the ecosystem is on transferring this data is really complex. It's made by the patient itself, the sensors that are collecting information from the user, some local processing to extract information. Then the information needs to be transported securely to a cloud system and then stored and then elaborated furthermore to be sent to the doctor. Each piece of this ecosystem has some specificality. If you think about the patient, we need to design a device considering also the ergonomics, the usability, how the patient is interfacing and interacting with the device. If we think about sensors, picking the right sensors in a way that we derive the right information is the key challenge from an architectural standpoint. Sensor must be very accurate up to the level that is needed. They need to use the less power as possible. And when we are performing some computing on this data that is coming from a sensor, we need to pick up the right algorithm, the right silicon ecosystem to reduce the battery size to the minimum. Thinking about the transportation of information is a totally different game. Here is important to use less energy in transmitting and receiving data, but also the latency, having the right a most efficient way to transfer the data as soon as possible to the cloud for further analytics and processing. Cloud, on the other side, requires scalability, first of all, because when more and more devices are in the market, you need to be able to quickly scale up and collect the data from all the devices. And the doctor and healthcare providers and the caregivers, they require a completely different set of functions and features in the system, how the data is represented to them. So getting rid of engineering framework down to a medical framework, extracting the real relevant information that is aligned to what the doctor is expected to see for the right interpretation. So if we go one level deeper and we talk about the data sources and how the sensors are collecting from the patient the relevant information, the first outcome of this process is to improve the outcome of the therapy, managing the therapy. And this can be done in different ways. One we know very well is creating a closed loop, like a CGM and an insulin pump. So something that is really around the user itself. Another usage is to improve clinical trials outcomes, because by adding additional sensor during a clinical trial, we can have a different level to discriminate or identify outliers in the statistical distributions that can provide some significant meaning that can tune the treatment and the trial outcome itself. And of course, once all this big data is sent to the cloud, there are additional algorithm analytics that can derive specific patterns and derive specific insights to be provided to the doctor and to the patient, and we will see later some examples. Here, everything is based on the data of the signals that we collect from the patient. And indeed, this is not just raw data. It's important that this raw data is sent to the cloud, is transported with additional information that is somehow capturing also or guiding the purpose of the use of this data. Most important of all is the quality factor. So if we publish an heart rate measurement, we should also publish the quality factor behind, so that if someone else is using an algorithm accessing this data, they know what level of quality is behind the data provided. Another important thing is to provide an information about the time of when the information was taken and for how long. So if there are some averaging algorithm or other processing. On the other side, from an architectural perspective, we should avoid to oversample the data, because getting more measurements than needed is an impact on the battery size, on the algorithm, and overall the system of a medical device used by the patient. And indeed, finally, this data should be good to be following some specific inter-exchange formats, so that it can be easily managed from one cloud system to another one for additional exchange, as an electronic health record is requiring. If we look more closer to the patient itself, today we already have several sensors. We know very well glucose meters, pulse oximeters, ECG bands, and other devices. The outcome of this system is to create different data streams that are somehow separated and go through some sensor fusion and processing algorithm to extract some additional information. What we call this way of analyzing the data a digital twin, so the representation of a patient in the cloud. This is really what the doctor is seeing when he's accessing the data. So it's a kind of a blurred vision of a patient with just few pieces of information. Of course, it's not the same as being co-located physically in the doctor's office. We can enhance this picture by leveraging additional sensor integrated in medical devices, or even in what we call companion devices, other devices that we have in our homes, like a weight scale with biometric measurements, or a wristband, or a smartwatch, a medical grade smartwatch. And these are still feeding additional information to the cloud that combined together can improve the outcome, can improve the measurement, the accuracy of the measurement. This is somehow we achieve a more high resolution digital twin picture that can spot specific patterns, specific behaviors to the doctor and to the patient itself for additional analytics. If you think about the building blocks and the technologies behind, of course, there is the sensor itself, like an accelerometer to detect activity of a person, or a step counter. We have all the hardware necessary to, for example, measure pulse oximetry from a tip of a finger. But indeed, there are also technologies related to the manufacturing side of it, like managing stretchable electronics for a wearable device, or encapsulating a device to protect it against waterproof and water intrusion. Being able also to scale up with, for example, roll-to-roll manufacturing processes for very, very high volume. And in this picture, again, being able to provide computational analytics with low power silicon and connectivity is really important to complete the picture of a sensor on the person. In Flex, we have a platform that is called Flexcin. It's a combination of different small sensor boards that can be combined together on a low power computational core to understand together with the customer what kind of data can be extracted by the sensor and what is the noise behind this data and how we can improve the measurement by managing specific algorithm on the data. And just as an example that I would like to show is that this is how we can integrate quickly into a medical device a breath flow sensor that can collect the profile of breath from a patient. And with this kind of analytics, we can understand the level, the accuracy of the measurement, the noise on the data that is collected, if we need to activate additional processing of the sensor. In COVID-19 timeframe, this is again, that we see a boost of this kind of sensing because there are some analytics that can discriminate also the condition of your lungs by looking at your breath. If you think about wearable as probably is the best example of a device around the body, indeed is a combination of different technologies. It's not just hardware processing, but is the capability of combining glass with plastics or encapsulating electronics with rubber, integrating batteries that need to sustain high temperatures during the manufacturing process, or enabling contactless charging or transparent materials for pulse oximetry measurement. So you need somehow to master all these different technologies and manufacturing processes to achieve a very good high-level quality of the device for this kind of space. Once the data is collected, the device itself performs some specific computation on this information. And as an example, I can show you how the heart rate, that is the first measurement that you can collect from just 2 wires on the body or an optical system, can be combined, for example, with a PPG sensor and with a specific time velocity algorithm derive the blood pressure of a person. Then nowadays, there are companies that are specialized more and more in the analytics of a waveform of the electrical voltage that is collected up to a point that they can compute several medical grade information, like detecting atrial fibrillation or stress analytics, or even identify the user from a specific waveform coming from the heart. So we see a shift from a pure system architecture perspective focused on the silicon and creating the lowest cost solution to a combination of hardware and software to provide the best local computation of this information that is collected from the body as a sort of local network. And this is an example how we can combine a wearable jacket that is collecting ECG information to an algorithm that is provided by B-Secure company that is monitoring the patient and is computing real-time a stress score, so telling us if the patient is going through a higher stress compared to the previous measurement or so, is computing the energy, the calories, and the heart rate variability. And from these basic measurements, they can also derive bradycardia, tachycardia, and atrial fibrillation that are important triggers of specific heart conditions. So here we don't want to clearly replace the doctor, but is a 24/7 analytics that is running on a very low power computational platform, so can be battery operated and can trigger a message to a doctor, specifically sending the right pattern, the window of pattern that is relevant for a further medical analysis by the doctor. Another example, looking at the future, is how we can integrate voice recognition in medical devices. So nowadays, the silicon is becoming so powerful that is able to recognize specific keywords without reaching the cloud. If we think smart speakers today of Amazon or Google and so, they are still sending the voice to the cloud for recognition. Here in this platform, we can run voice recognition locally without the connectivity available and immediately collect the information and later on send it to the cloud. An example here is We have, for example, an injector where is injecting a pain relief therapy, and is asking to the patient, what is your pain level today? The patient is answering a specific set of keywords, like very low, very high also, and is collected day over day. And this is a good way to improve the data that is collected, and looking at how the therapy is moving, and maybe the doctor looking at this data can adjust or reduce or increase the dosage for the patient, and improve overall the outcome of the therapy. Then after this local processing, the data needs to be transferred. And this is another challenge, of course, depending on the budget and the features that can be spent on the device side and the connectivity that we want to achieve. Typically for a low-cost single-use device like a prefilled syringe, NFC and RFID is the primary technology to transfer the data to the cloud, and leveraging also a smartphone as an intermediate relay point. If we want to achieve some more freedom for the end user, Bluetooth Low Energy is the way to go, because with even a small battery, we can send more information, and the user has a better freedom of to operate the device without going very close to the smartphone. Specific environments like an hospital network are still using Wi-Fi with all the data like ECG and other data streams that are sent from big equipment to the network, or using even proprietary or ZB protocols. But there are two emerging technologies that I want to mention that are somehow a game changer. One is LoRaWAN, that has been originally designed for smart cities, smart buildings, so sort of kind of infrastructure data collection. But indeed is a way to collect also from a medical device a little amount of data without having the smartphone. But if we need a really freedom, CAT-M and narrowband IoT is the way to go nowadays. And this technology is enabling some moderate bandwidth in sending data, and with getting rid of a smartphone in the middle. So the user will send the data, actually the device will send the data to the cloud without asking anything to the user, of course, if it is authorized to do so. And of course, the user can anyway retrieve information from the cloud with a specific app being developed. If we talk about local processing and remote processing, so two completely different point in time where the data is transformed from raw data to actionable information. Local processing, we are filtering out the raw data. We are trying to remove artifacts. We do a first level analytics like heart rate, out of band notification. Remote processing is looking at more long-term patterns, specific week over week changes, keeping history of the last year, and do big data analytics. From a power perspective, local processing is a challenge, because the more processing we perform, bigger is the battery required. So there is some fine tuning in design stage to optimize the system and selecting the right mix of hardware and firmware, while on the cloud side, the power is not a big deal. Latency, of course, local processing, the user is expecting a first immediate feedback, while on remote processing is more post-processing. Let's have a look how the week went, and this kind of analysis. So looking at long-term patterns and trigger specific actions as insights. And finally, from a human factor, the device for local processing is very important. The interface with the user, the human factor engineering is a key driver. Or remote processing is more how we present the information to the doctor, to the healthcare provider, to be very effective in analyzing the data. This is what I show here is an example where we used our Flexcin platform with an ECG front end to capture the waveform from the heart and do some local processing, taking out the noise, taking out the userless information, and be able to compress it down to the bandwidth available from a narrowband IoT link adapter. In this way, we can stream real-time the ECG data, that is a pretty complex waveform, down to a doctor office, passing through the Amazon Web Service front end and back end. And everything is protected and encrypted by the latest security protocols. So this is a game changer. In the past, there was a mobile phone in the middle taking this action. Now this architecture is full mobile free. In this space, we recognize that CAT-M and narrowband IoT is the leading technology to enhance connectivity with the next generation of medical devices. So Flexcin is actively working on this, and there's a specific solution that is a miniaturized module, 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters, incorporating several pieces of silicon together. It's called a system in package to enable this kind of connectivity even in very small form factors. And this is enabling several applications, smart hospitals, wearables, and very small compact devices in connected healthcare. Just some examples to better frame what we are talking about. So let's think about a disposable syringe that is single use, very low cost driven. Here, what we can do is to add a very small electronic module and plastic cap on the top of the syringe. And what the module is doing is that it will communicate with a mobile phone before the injection takes place, and will grant the user, will provide a feedback to the user that the information, some information about the drug, the authenticity of the drug, the expiration date of the drug, and the right time of injection, that is the right time to inject. So prevent a bad injection at bad timing. After the injection has been performed, the switch, the electronics inside, the switch inside the electronics will detect that the syringe has been used. And at this point in time, the information exchanged with the smartphone is different, and will notify the user that the injection has been completed properly, was the right time, and the user can set a reminder or even order another package to be delivered to his home if the syringes there are a few syringes left in the package. So this is somehow a game changer. The usage of a smartphone here with NFC reading is enabling a better adherence monitoring, also somehow a better safety for a user with preventing an injection at the wrong time. On the other side, jumping on a very complex product like an auto-injector, we can think about adding narrowband IoT, for example, to transfer the time of injection, the quantity of drug injected, and the dosage to the cloud directly. But in a device like this, with a very powerful system inside, we can enable additional data collection. For example, adding a heart rate monitor or a pulse oximetry monitor. When the device is held by the user, the fingers are touching the case, so potentially we could use this contact to retrieve additional information. Adding an accelerometer, for example, could derive some tremors, could detect some tremors for the patient and collect them to the cloud for further analysis. Or looking at the orientation of the device, the doctor could understand that the user is using the device in the wrong way or has changed the injection point from a leg to an arm or to another part of the body, and talk about it. Finally, we talked a bit about companion devices before. This is an example of a lateral flow test strip that is made smart in the sense that it is managing the color detection and the analytics inside of the strip and send the information directly to the smartphone to be sent then to the cloud. And this is somehow a game changer because we'll enable people to run the test without visually understanding on the sense what is the application taking care of that and doing some analytics at home. So a couple of examples to close the discussion on how these additional sensors and data can be a game changer. So for example, what I can say is that a doctor is looking at the glucose levels over the week and the system is also reporting the heart rate and is noticing a higher heart rate in the mornings on Wednesdays. So talking with the patient, it comes up that the patient is doing some running in the morning before lunch. So he can say, oh, that's very good. So give a positive feedback to the user, but also can adjust the therapy knowing that there is additional physical activity on Wednesdays mornings. Another example is a doctor that is looking at air quality measurements taken by a device in the kitchen of a person, for example, and he can talk with the user and understand then that the user is a guest in the house that is smoking. So at that point, he can say back to the user that to the patient that is smoking is bad, even you are not, but it's passive smoking. So please ask your guest to smoke outside the room. So improving again the life of a patient. And finally, a doctor that is looking detects some combination between a high pain level reported by the users in the morning and the change of injection, of the time of injection. So a user that has moved the night injection into late afternoon and then is reporting a higher pain level in the morning. So maybe the patient didn't notice this correlation, and talking with the doctor now has real data to discuss and say, oh, I noticed that you anticipated your injection. This is why you are feeling a higher pain in the morning. Please go back to your original scenario. So in conclusion, indeed, remote patient monitoring is a growing trend boosted by these additional sensors or opportunities that are becoming smaller and smaller, requiring less power, and connectivity that is also improving on its side. There is a need to follow and support a patient-centric approach, so providing more information that can be also exchanged and specifically defined on a patient level. And indeed, to design and manufacture these devices means to be part of a bigger ecosystem where each one needs to collaborate and be everyone aligned on the regulatory framework that is guiding the design.
Thank you so much, Marco. And it looks like we have several questions. I'm going to start with Spencer's, who says, does narrowband IoT require a service provider data contract? And how does the patient access the service if they have a device?
Yes, indeed. So a service provider contract is required, but indeed still the technology is growing. So we are seeing service providers that are already providing an electronic module where we can integrate an electronic SIM with already the data logged. So you, by buying the hardware, you can also buy already maybe a 5 years contract, you forget about it. Or others that are providing a sort of virtualization of a connectivity service, taking care of a different contracts with the different countries and provide you somehow a general access worldwide to the connectivity. So is a really important point of attention. How we can, if it is the patient or is the service, the company, the drug company that needs to take care of providing this contract inside the device.
And then Michael asks, can a smart speaker become a medical companion device?
A very good point. So indeed, yes, we do have smart speakers in our homes. The point is that from, if we go back to the original scenario when someone is injecting and is talking with the injector. So we need to think that the patient wants to interact with his illness only that specific time of the day. So okay, it's time to inject. Now he's managing my therapy. That is the right point to ask about your medical condition. I don't think that the patient will like to talk with a smart speaker about their illness outside of this window of time where they are relating to their therapy and to their illness condition. The rest of the day, they want to forget and stay away and enjoy life as we do. So yeah, I don't think that a smart speaker will become a very good companion from a medical perspective.
So I think we have time for one more question, and that is, how is artificial intelligence impacting product architecture?
Yeah, I think it is impacting mainly because today we are used to send data to the cloud with somehow closed systems. But once the data to be more effective will be needed to be analyzed together with other data, we need to send to the cloud also information about the time, the quality, the purpose of this data, so that artificial intelligence knows what is the quality of the data that is being accessed. Otherwise, if we send garbage in, you get garbage out also from an artificial intelligence perspective. It's true that if more data is collected properly, then there is an opportunity for artificial intelligence to improve the accuracy of the measurement.
All right. And actually, we've got one from Fabio who says, great presentation. What is the LoRa WAN coverage today in the US? And can you give us some examples of a typical, quote unquote, small set of data that this network would easily transmit?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that the coverage is evolving. I have some charts, not here in these presentations, but indeed, while in the past there was somehow a differentiation between Europe and US, nowadays the service providers are recognizing the need of having a sort of worldwide coverage and expanding the two protocols, the two solutions in both regions. So US today is covering both technologies, a major part of US, and these are evolving, of course.
Well, great. Thank you, Marco. I think that wraps it. Thanks everyone for attending. We will send you a recording of this, and also you may be interested in the past sessions, so we'll send you a link so that you can view those on demand. We wish everybody a very happy holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending.